Good morning. It's Wednesday, May the 25th. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. I'm Kayode Okikulu.
Good morning. Thank you for choosing to share your day with us. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
Given that day just reminds me that, wait a minute, another day older this year. Amaya Makinde, good morning and welcome.
Are you afraid of growing old? Ayo. Good morning, Nigeria. From Abuja, I'm Maope Ogun Yusuf.
Oh, what a day it was yesterday. In Abuja, actually, that was the theater of, what do I call it, operation, the theater of the drama. And I'm talking about the standoff at the home of the former governor of Imo State, presidential aspirant, and Senator Rochas Okorocha by the EFCC. It was a 7-hour standoff. And, I mean, for some, it was like a scene from a movie. Maybe not a Nigerian movie, maybe a Western movie where you have a standoff and it lasts for that long. But essentially the fact that the EFCC said they wanted to carry out an arrest, invite him, I mean, different words thrown out there. Eventually they put out a statement on the Twitter handle of the EFCC and across saying that, well, the last adjourned date of March the 28th, recall that there's this 2.9 billion naira alleged fraud case which the EFCC has instituted against the former governor and presidential aspirant. So the EFCC said, well, at the last adjourned date, the judge, Justice Eko, said, well, this is going to be the last adjournment. And they thought, wait a minute, we're about 5 days away from May the 30th, which is the next date for the hearing. And they thought, well, 5 days to it, let us go early and take him into custody. Another point that was made was that he had been invited time and again. But then you see his lawyer saying, well, they had not gotten any such invitation prior to this one. In fact, Senator Okorocha, who tried to speak from behind the doors, which was eventually broken down, you get to see that, said that, well, first he had not gotten any invitation. He was asking for a warrant of arrest and all of that, but nothing was shown to him. Eventually things got rowdy. And I think one of the concerns he had was that, well, there's a presidential screening for his party and he might miss out on all of this. I wonder how people are taking this on board, especially, you know, the perceived fight against corruption, whether or not there's a political inclination to this EFCC. As Simon again said, no, there isn't. But, I mean, you understand how people read meanings to this. So I wonder really how you took all of this on board.
Well, Kayode, there's a question mark, a huge question mark on the manner in which, you know, the EFCC laid siege to his home. And the aspirant, Senator Okorocha, was saying that, you know, the trauma on his family is needless. You know, if intelligence was swift to reveal that this was where the aspirant, the senator, would be at this particular point in time, you know, a siege could also have been laid to him at another location. Well, my disposition is ambivalent all the same, because if you look at the facts of the case, the lawyer also said there is an injunction on arrest, there is an injunction on interrogation. Before I begin to talk about that, let's go to what the man himself, the man in the eye of the storm, said on our program, Hard Copy. He talked about the background to the case, where if the person who was a governor in his home state was not the governor, is not the governor currently, he would not be going through you know, these challenges. And he talked about an initial 9 billion naira allegation leveled against him, which the commission said turned out to be, you know, untrue, and that perhaps the 2.9 billion naira current allegation may be the balance for which the EFCC is asking. But then again, if that is true, if he's such on a high moral ground, why obtain an injunction against interrogation? Why obtain an injunction against prosecution? You know, these are some of the issues that need to be probed deeply before we make up our minds on this issue. Maokwe.
Well, Buki, just a bit of background to that conversation we held on Hard Copy. Just on Monday, yes, was Monday, we had planned an interview for that Monday with Senator Okorocha against the backdrop of the primaries, which is coming up, the quest, the agitations for Southeastern candidate for all the parties. Don't forget that there had been a Greater Nigeria conference, so we're trying to follow up to see just how much fruit that conference had yielded. It didn't seem like it had yielded much because all of the parties, so far so good, have been quiet on the issue of zoning their candidacy, especially the presidential candidacy, to the Southeast, which was the purpose of that conference. So we had all of that conversation and sundry talk. And of course, we had to bring in this angle. I mean, because he has presented himself as an aspirant on the platform of the All Progressives Congress, very optimistic that he could clinch it. In fact, he was giving me some scoop that about the meeting which the president held with the other candidates, aspirants, beg your pardon, and that, you know, something could change between when we spoke and Friday. I mean, he was very optimistic about it. So we're like, why not ask, of course, I mean, that if you have presented yourself, there must be, you know, things that you have done. Well, what precisely are you selling to Nigerians? These are some of the accusations against you. The nepotism is a big accusation. You tried to make your son-in-law governor after you. You had a lot of family in government when you were a governor. And also the allegation leveled against you by the EFCC. And that was the explanation he gave. I mean, that was the clip we had. That conversation happened just on Monday. We're going to air it on Friday, the full length of it. So please stay tuned then. And then we saw that it seemed that the EFCC wasn't letting up. I mean, that the EFCC hadn't forgotten the case or was not going to wait until after the primaries to act. And that was what we saw yesterday. Now, it was unclear if they were going to go in and bring him out or just what that was going to yield, because this is not the first time we have seen the EFCC go to people's homes to try and get them. And sometimes it doesn't just work. Maybe not the EFCC, maybe the DSS in some instances. You just find out that maybe they have to go back. And this is also happening about the same time that the EFCC chairman, Abdulrashid Bauer, was at an event yesterday saying that they're losing more cases on the grounds of technicalities. You have to ask, you know, if they learn any lesson from that, if they learn any lesson from the fact that they lose cases based on technicality. Because if there was no arrest warrant yesterday, if there was nothing, you know, no document, according to the lawyer, then you have to ask, haven't they jeopardized the merits of the case? Just asking. Those are some of the big questions that we'll be asking if we're able to get, of course, the officials of the FCC, or unless they're able to provide documents showing that they had they had been empowered by the courts to go into or to do what they did yesterday at Senator Rochester's house. But as you rightly asked, Buki, I mean, he who is down should fear no foe, right? I mean, if your hands are clean, you should be able to go and defend yourself and, you know, clear your name. Shouldn't it be that way? These are some of the questions that Nigerians are asking. Why, before now, had Senator Okorocha not just, you know, yielded himself to the EFCC, cleared his name and, you know, gone on about his business? These are some of the questions that Nigerians will continue to ask. Gentlemen and lady.
For me, guys, the only question that will come in my mind is perception. You know, how is the world perceiving us now? I mean, for instance, Senator Okorocha goes way back even before the Fourth Republican governance. And a number of people might be wondering what perception we are bringing out or shooting out as a people, you know, in terms of governance, because he is a former governor, for God's sake, and he is a senator, so he is in leadership in Nigeria. So if the leadership doesn't, as Mawakwe, you know, just rightly pointed out, have issues with the law, it will seem, just, I mean, what's it called? Suspicion is not a sentence of guilt. Just show yourself and clear your nail. The second thing that comes to me of all of these is leadership. It's the people. At the end of the day, how do all these issues we have raised here this morning impinge on governance? For me, those are the issues. Let's look at the papers and look at a number of things on those front lines.
Telegraph and picks up sort of where we left off. Drama, gunshots as the FCC arrests Okorocha for jumping bail. Operatives laid siege to mansion for 9 hours. Oh, there you go. Allow me to attend APC presidential screening, lawmaker appeals. So it's a page 2 read. It's a drama of sorts, and we said so much about this one, by the way. I mean, we gave it a lot of coverage so our viewers can know exactly how these things went down. You can go over to our YouTube page and get a sense of exactly what played out. I mean, a blow-by-blow account, as they say. But take a look at this one. Submit fake certificates, go to jail. INEC warns politicians. FG approves a level data bank to curb fake results. So, I mean, you know how fake results keep cropping up. I think there's been a lot of reduction, really. So again, looks like we want to put finality to that one. Just, you wanted to say something?
No, I'm not saying anything. I plead the fifth, if there is a fifth in Nigeria.
There you go. There's this one under the big picture, and it's just a sad reminder of the security situation across perceived targeted killings. No religious ethnic killings in Anambra, Soludo. Says indigents have suffered more casualties in the state as Arewa youths warn Southeast governors, say nobody has monopoly of violence.
I think that needs to be underlined, emboldened in capitals. Let's take out the sentiments in the issues that we are having, especially in terms of security, ethnicity, religion. Remember the former commissioner in Kaduna and deputy commissioner of police in Anambra, Mr. Gili, saying to us, look, let's remove these sentiments. Criminality is exactly what it is. No other shade should be given to it, so that we can deal with the issues in the value, according to the value of the issues of insecurity, because politicizing, ethnicizing, sentimentalizing these issues.
If there's a word as that.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I wonder if we should give airtime, we should give attention to some commentary, some narrative, you know. When you say that no religion has monopoly of violence, should we even be talking about it? It's worrying.
Especially, I mean, you can't take away, I mean, whatever motives the criminals have. I mean,
certainly.
Clearly, they're fighting this on different angles. They also want to have a psychological, you know, warfare mentality where they make people think, okay, this is the approach to things, so that people can essentially pick it up from there.
Yeah.
And of course, make things worse. But I think at the root of this is ensuring that all those involved are brought to justice.
Absolutely.
That's why I said.
So, if there's justice, then all of this will.
That's it.
All these ideas will be dead on arrival.
And guess what? Justice is one of the core values of Nigeria.
Yeah.
Unity and faith, peace and progress. In the Constitution, one of those channels talks about justice as a core value of Nigeria.
The more often than not, that justice always comes at a great cost. That's if it ever comes at all.
Well,
and the Tribune this morning has so many unsettling stories, but the facts must be told, actually. And it leads with this one: killing of pregnant woman, 4 children in Anambra. CAN, that's the Christian Association of Nigeria, Arewa group say things getting out of hand. The writers provide more insight. Boko Haram kills over 60 farmers in Borno. Bandits killed 12 in Katsina community. Terrorists forced 25,000 maize farmers out of farm. Killed 1,454 in Katsina Maize Farmers Association. You know, it makes me double down on that sentiment yet again. There's a right to know and there's a need to know. Sometimes maybe we should just tone down on some of these stories so that we don't give, albeit uncannily, validity to the works of men of the underworld. Yeah. Okay, so we'll leave that and go to the bottom part of the Tribune. And it says 811 delegates to pick PDP's presidential candidate. And there are some surprises, perhaps as a result of 84-8, you know, that part of the new Electoral Act as amended. Dino loses to Yusuf as Moro, Ikpeazu, Galadima, Kaita, Ishaku, Ibori's daughter. Others win PDP senatorial tickets. And more surprises are sure to come in the coming days. Let's go to the top corner of The Tribune this morning, before we move on, CBN raises interest rates to 13% from 11.5%. That's first in 6 years. There's a lot to say about that, perhaps later on. And there's this interesting one. Why Nigerian exporters lie about origin of export in UK. Those causing Nigerian exporters to lie about export must repent of their sins. If there's capacity to export, why not tap it judiciously as much as possible? And lastly, before we leave the Tribune, AFDB commits to invest $25 billion for energy adaptation in Africa. Ayo.
The Vanguard newspaper this morning is looking at it this way. Presidency. All eyes on Buhari as APC weighs options. Find that story on page 5 of the paper today. And the writers give you a little more inkling. Confusion over APC screening of presidential aspirants. Party chair Adamu briefs president. Aspirants intensify scramble for 2,340 delegates. 24 hours after, APC again adjusts timetable. Voting money bags has disastrous consequences. Pro-Osinbajo group cautions delegates. Okay, I guess I don't know what to make of that, but that's what you have right there. And then, you know, talking about the aspirants intensifying scramble, I saw that breakdown that, okay, X number of states should have had this because of this, but for now, they are reduced to this. You know, for me, at the end of the day, please, let's just have good governance. Let's have the right set of people in power. And below the pictures, terrorists killed over 72 in Borno, Katsina in 72 hours. Not a good thing to see, honestly, but that's what you have on the front page of the paper today. The back page of Vanguard newspaper has sports. Salah wants Real ahead Champions League final. That will be exciting news to some. Everton season most mentally challenging, according to Iwobi. Mr. and Mrs. are having a Mr. and Mrs. talk that I would allow you to please go check out yourself. That's the Vanguard newspaper today.
Well, let's quickly run through Daily Trust for you, and they have this. Terrorists kill 65 farmers, others in Katsina, Borno attacks. Boko Haram slaughter 50 in Ran, injure many. Do you remember Ran? Ran was where the military accidentally, that's the Nigerian Air Force, I think, accidentally dropped a bomb a few years ago. And they owned up to it. I think it's one of the things that the current Chief of Defense Staff is remembered for, because then he was the one in charge of Operation Lafia Dole, the operation in the northeast, which was trying to rout Boko Haram at the time when this accident occurred. But this is Boko Haram now killing 50 people in Ran, injure many. I'm yet to be briefed, that's according to the police commissioner. Our people under siege, says Representative Gimba. 15 killed, over 100 cows rustled in Jibia, where you find all of the stories on page 4 of the paper. Terrorists killed 65 farmers. 65, that's an enormous figure. And look at this one. I'm now left with nobody. That's according to the husband of woman killed with 4 kids by IPOB. ACF, NEF can condemn killings, demand decisive action from Southeast governor. You also see this. School feeding, federal government to spend 999 million naira daily on 10 million pupils. That story is on page 28. Abuja, Kaduna train attackers give conditions to federal government. Let's leave it there for Daily Trust. If I may, I'll quickly run through leadership as well. Look at this. As governorship primaries kick off, 300 APC, PDP aspirants beg delegates for party ticket. That's what they have on the front page. ADC, APGA, SDP, NNPP, PRP, others in consultations over selection process. Outgoing governors and last-minute push for anointed contestants. Aspirants cage delegates in hotels. Stop them from making calls. The strategies never change, do they? You find that there. And look at this. They also have that story on terrorism for you. Terrorists kill 57 as bandits give ultimatum on train passengers. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
You know, I think it's not enough to hear from the police or even the army that, you know, the report about the killing in Ran is either being investigated or they've not heard about it. I mean, dozens of farmers, some reporting as much as 60. It's just mind-blowing because Iran had always been an enclave of Boko Haram before now. So hearing this happening again, it's just a sad reminder. So we expect that this, of course, is dealt with, and of course, let's know what's going on. Take a look at the Guardian newspaper this morning. The front page has this one. Confusion trails Buhari governor's meeting as APC adjusts timetable. That's on the primaries. I think that's one of the most adjusted timetables in recent times. And on top of that picture, you see General Abubakar kicks against zoning, defends 1999 constitution. So the conversation around zoning is still very much with us. That's, I mean, a major look at the stories on the front of the Guardian, or front page of the Guardian, but there's way more for you, so you might want to pick up a copy.
And from the Guardian, let's take a quick look at News Direct. News Direct leads with the big business story from Tuesday, CBN's 13% interest rate approval, borrowers to pay more for loans. What are the riders saying? As CBN blames rising inflation, aggregate demand, firms up 5% subsidy rate on agri, health, power, manufacturing sectors. There's more, but you'll find that story on page 4 of News Direct. And just two more stories from this paper. You merit second term, deciding otherwise suicidal to Osun future. That's coming from a royal father on the Osun election. And lastly, rising LPG price, Technogas boss Obi calls for federal government's intervention. There's been hundreds of percent of increase in the price of LPG, and that needs to be looked into. Ayo.
The Daily Independent leads with this one, 13.6 trillion naira pension asset under management at risk on back of downtown job losses.
It is a pension.
Let me read it again. 13.6 trillion naira pension asset under management at risk on back of downtown job losses. Got it now? Well, yes, it is pension.
That would be downturn.
Downturn, yes.
I'm not the only one listening in for that one. Pension is always a very touchy subject.
Okay, right below the picture, CBN succumbs, raises interest rate to 13%, first in 6 years. We need to understand better what this is about, so we'll, as Bukola mentioned earlier, we will most certainly get to it. So many other stories on the front page, but I think we can rest Daily Independent at that level.
That's right, and that's it with a look at the front pages this morning. But we're coming back with our first topic of the day. We're dissecting the affairs of the political parties as they concern you, especially with the perspective of the umpire, INEC. You don't want to miss this. Stay with us.
Gathered in this hall at the INEC headquarters in Yola, Adamawa State, are party leaders, security operatives, civil society organizations, youth organizations, amongst others. The meeting is to interface on the ongoing continuous voter registration exercise and other sundry activities woven around the 2023 general election.
We remind political parties that by the provision of Section 84, Subsection 13 of the Electoral Act, any political party that fails to comply with the provisions of the Electoral Act in the conduct of its primary shall not have a candidate for the office in respect of which there was non-compliance with the Act in the conduct of its primaries. In other words, you must comply with the provisions of the timetable, the schedule of activities given by the Commission. You must conduct your primary based on timetable given to us by you and sent to us. And failure to comply with the Act automatically disqualifies your candidate that comes out of that primary, because the primary will be considered to be not conducted.
It was interactive as concerns were raised and commendations given on the exercise.
Can an ad hoc staff or an agent or any voter insist that such person or so person is underage and should not be allowed to vote during an election?
I want to commend the Presidential Electoral Commission for identifying the voters, those that will be automatically disqualified, and they equally say they are going to be dealt with. I think that step should be taken properly because it's going to help in giving our electoral process.
We have only 3 wards in the whole of Sengo where there is network. But presently, with the use of offline registration, they are doing perfectly well, because they will go there with the software that accepts where there is not network. They will register those people. The moment they arrive where there is network, it's uploaded, and we here, we see what they are doing, and we appreciate that. So the same technology will be applied during the election.
Given the mounting security challenge in the state and the activities of terrorists, the State Commissioner of Police assures of adequate security during the elections.
INEC has gone digital, so also security has gone digital. We have put in place facial recognition devices that anybody who does anything that is against the law, we are not going to view it as a political matter. We are going to deal with it as a criminal matter.
The foundation to any credible election rests on the credibility of the voter register. The appropriate deployment of the Automated Biometric Identification System, ABIS, to detect multiple registrations will all enhance, in the election process perhaps, what needs to be done by INEC to ensure that all these are done promptly.
Well, to shift or not to shift? That's the question, especially concerning the INEC timetable concerning the elections. And three gentlemen join us this morning. Festus Okoye is National Commissioner INEC and Chairman, Information and Voter Education. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mr. Okoye. We also have with us here in our studio Clement Onwewumo, who is a Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you very much for being here. As well as Yabagi Sani, who is Chairman, Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC. He joins us from our studio in Abuja. Thanks for joining us. Mr. Okoye, let's begin with you.
Good morning.
Yeah, and we know that INEC most certainly has been thinking about and looking at all the angles to the conversations going on, especially the several delays by the various political parties concerning their primaries. So what is INEC's position and what are the considerations, if any, for a shift in the election timetable?
I think it is too late in the day to talk about shifting or adjusting the timetable and schedule of activities released by the Independent National Electoral Commission. As you are aware, the President signed the Electoral Act 2022 on the 25th day of February 2022. And on the 26th, the next day, the Independent National Electoral Commission released the timetable and schedule of activities for the 2023 general election. And embedded in that particular timetable includes the conduct of party primaries. Now, this timetable was released in February. Nobody complained about the timetable in February. In March, we didn't receive any complaints. In April, we didn't receive any complaints. It was only in May that the Inter-Party Advisory Council raised issues around the timetable. But as the as the IPAC was raising issues, the 18 registered political parties wrote to the commission stating their readiness, stating their preparedness to go ahead with the party primaries. And up to today, no political party has officially raised the issue with the commission relating to their inability to conduct the party primaries within the time window, within the parameters of the period given in the timetable and schedule of activities. Moreover, so many of the political parties have already elected their state assembly candidates, elected their candidates for House of Representatives, elected their senatorial candidates. So I think it's too late in the day to begin to shift the goalposts. And the commission is not even considering adjusting the timetable even by one day.
Given the build-up that we have seen so far, Mr. Okoye, is this something that INEC saw coming, that there could be such push by the political parties, especially in the light of prevailing, circumstances where some of the political parties are shifting the dates of their primaries? Is this something you saw coming?
Well, we expect that the political parties will put their house in order. Every Nigerian is aware that
primaries will be conducted to elect or select candidates that will be the flag bearers of the political parties. Every political party is aware of this, and every political party is aware that the Independent National Electoral Commission was going to roll out a timetable and schedule of activities for the conduct of party primaries. So we expect the political parties to put their houses in order. Now, I think that what you are seeing, what is going on, relates to the internal party dynamics of the various political parties. And the Independent National Electoral Commission made it very clear to the political parties that it is imperative for them to conduct what we call valid party primaries. So if they have not conducted valid party primaries, and if they're having challenges with the conduct of party primaries, it has nothing to do with the commission. You see, you are looking at the challenges of two political parties. As far as the commission is concerned, we have 18 registered political parties in Nigeria, and the 18 parties have the same incidence of registration. And so if at the end of the day, the commission receives a nomination from only 2 registered political parties, it does not detract from anything. So let us look at the political parties in their dynamics, look at the political parties in their incidence of registration, and not classify one as a big political party and the other one as a small political party. As far as the commission is concerned, there is no big political party in Nigeria, and there's no small political party in Nigeria.
Okay, let's take this to Mr. Yabagi-Sani, because you spoke directly to political parties and then IPAC as well. Well, Mr. Sani, for Mr. Okoye, the 18 registered political parties said at the onset that, I mean, they're ready for this, that they're okay with the timetable. But you, as a chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, you have asked for a postponement time and again. Are you speaking for the 18 political parties, perhaps your party, or where exactly is this coming from?
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians. I want to, first of all, put it on record that we are highly, highly impressed with what INEC is doing. We have a lot of respect for INEC because of the lot of improvement they have brought into the process, digitalization and things like that. Everybody is happy with this because there's a lot that will happen in terms of getting our elections right, to be credible, reliable, to be also all-inclusive. You know. So having said that, it is not true that the parties did not write to INEC. I know of some parties that wrote to INEC, but as an umbrella body of the political parties, after receiving the timetable which Mr. Okoye was referring to, yes, we took a look at it. And he says we responded with our readiness or things like that. No. You see, you always complain. I mean, you always obey before complain. When INEC said submit your timetables and things like that, we now say, we told ourselves that, okay, please go ahead, submit whatever you can submit, but let us meet as a body under IPAC. And we did. And we now raise these issues. And we didn't just raise the issues. For instance, people say that, oh, holidays are known in Nigeria. Then if holidays are known and you say you are giving political parties 60 days, why not factor in the 14 days that were not part of that of the timetable you are giving to us? That, oh, we know we're going to have the holidays, Salah holidays, we're going to have the Christian Lenten, Easter holidays, and the things that happen. That was not factored into the 60 days that INEC gave to the 2 months that INEC gave to the political parties. Aside from that, Osun and Ekiti elections are coming, just within the same period. And we're going, so political parties are supposed to prepare for these 2 elections. They are major elections. They could also affect the capacity of the political parties to prepare well for these our own primaries that we're supposed to conduct, for the elections.
Okay, just quickly,
Number 3. This is the first time.
Go on to number 3.
This is the first time.
I'll let you make that point, but just to be clear, when you say we, the political parties, are you saying all the 18 political parties or some of them? How many of you are on the same page with this call for postponement, and how many of you are not?
Of us, we unanimously agreed that we must approach INEC, and we did. And even when INEC invited us for engagement, the last time we had one, all of us stood up and we spoke in the same vein that And that's why at that engagement, I delivered, our speech and our request to INEC, and we even raised the issue during our dinner with Mr. President, this iftar dinner. We told Mr. President we want him to please weigh in on this issue, because it isn't that the political parties are not ready or do not want this project to succeed. In fact, if there's anybody that benefits from this process, I think it is the political parties of all the beneficiaries. We are the major beneficiaries of this process, and we are the ones that will want to have the process to be hitch-free. So, but all we are saying is that the timetable is too tight, and more so, no political party is asking INEC to adjust, to shift the time of the primaries, or like that, or the timetable for the elections. No, the constitutional requirement is that not later than 180 days, parties should submit all their candidates, papers and requirements to INEC. What we're asking for does not in any way, in fact, you still have 2 months, or the 3 months that you add to that 180 days. So, which means what we're asking for, we are being reasonable, we are being considerate. We know the implications of shifting the timetable, in a way that will bring us constitutional crisis. We are very much aware of that, So, people saying, Mr. Okoye said, parties that, no, we unanimously, not only did we write to INEC, we also went there, all of us. In fact, the INEC chairman himself made a statement that day. He said, this is the first time I'm seeing all the 18 political parties, coming to our engagement. We even took photographs, because that was the only time that you had PDP, APC, ADP, ADC, all of us, were in that hall. For one reason, we wanted to ensure that INEC get the message that this is not something just coming out of the blues. No, it's a serious matter, because if you don't, what you need to do whatever is worth doing, at all, is worth doing well. And what we are saying is that when you make haste in doing things, you make mistakes. This is the first time this law is coming, into force. That's Electoral Act. And all we are saying is that give us time to take time to ensure that we sift through the papers being submitted by the politicians, because electoral law not only does it confer on us the responsibility, we are also accountable. If we submit anybody's name and his papers are discovered to be false, the party will be fined, and the chairman of the political party and the secretaries, will also, have to answer, to the court. So we are very mindful of the fact that this is a very serious business, and we are very mindful of the fact that we must make haste slowly, so that we don't make mistakes that, end of the day, will even, upset the entire arrangement we are trying to. Because primaries, like we all know in this country, that is where you have the biggest crisis. And that's where you have cost care crisis coming out. Not so much during the general elections. It is during the primaries that you have, some of these court cases that after you have done everything, the court will just come and say, well, you didn't follow your own laws or your constitution and things like that, and will overturn the whole thing they have done. So that's why we need time to do this thing right.
Yes, Mr. Yabagi, and moments ago you talked about Osun, and you expressed concern that because it's a major election, they'll need time, to take care of all of the logistics and the loose ends. Might I ask, Mr. Yabagi, if any of the main parties are putting pressure on you as chairman of IPAC, or making special appeals to you to further reinforce it on INEC to shift the deadline?
Well, Mr. Okoye himself mentioned that there's no big party or small party. IPAC respects, the views of all parties. We take a look at when we meet, to look at the situations. It doesn't matter whether it is just the smallest party, if you want to use the word, that is concerned, and all of us sitting down can see that, yes, you have a point what you are saying. So it's not whether APC or PDP is putting pressure. No, it's the fact that no matter how small a party is, you need to do this properly. The law doesn't say if you are small and you make a mistake, or you submit a name of somebody that is not qualified, they will not fine you. It says political parties. It says chairmen, national secretaries. And that's why it has nothing to do with whether PDP is having crisis or APC is having crisis. That is not what we are looking at. We are looking at what affects us as a body. And we don't discriminate that because we are big or because we are small. So we should not listen to your complaints. You know, on their own, they wrote to INEC. You know, they told me, some of them, the big parties. And we also came together and said, well, this is something that is necessary, that we should have. It isn't that if you are given time to do something well, you know, it's because of anything other than the fact that all of us are affected equally in this.
You keep talking about time, Mr. Yabagi, but under the circumstances, the PDP has begun holding its primaries without any incident. And in fact, some of them have been adjudged to be peaceful, and the APC, which you know, shifted the timeline for primaries indefinitely, has now adjusted it to suit the current time frame given by INEC. So under the circumstances, are you still saying that there is need for a postponement?
You see, haven't gone ahead to do their primaries. What we are saying is that we submitted our timetables. We told INEC that we are going to go ahead, but it will make a lot of sense if you allow, you know, parties to do, because primaries, like I'm saying, don't think what I have done has gone without hitch-free. You wouldn't know the hitch-free aspect of it, you know, until perhaps, you know, don't be surprised, until after even the 2023 general elections, that somebody will just wake up and say, you know, or, you know, that this is the problem. Although the law says that all issues must be resolved before the elections. So, but wait until that time. We don't know whether it's hitch-free or not hitch-free. Yes, there were no people, you know, bottles, you know, being broken or something like that. Yes, but let's wait and see what happens at the end of the day.
Well, there's a legal perspective to this. And
I'd like to ask.
Okay, go ahead, Mark. Please go ahead.
I'd like to ask Mr. Okoye a few questions, but let me clarify a few things from you. You said you were asking INEC to postpone it based on a few reasons. Some of them you gave as the fact that they were holidays, the Easter, the Salah holidays as well. So maybe I should flip this. I'm just making sure that I heard you right.
You had me right,
yes.
and I was saying that with reference to time, yes. That so, INEC is claiming that you gave you 60 days.
What INEC is saying,
yes.
I mean, what INEC said is that
yes.
you didn't ask for this in February, you didn't ask for it in March, April, you didn't ask for it, but now that May is here and is closer to the deadline, then you're drawing their attention to this.
No, we did. When INEC gave us the opportunity to come and talk, we did.
What time was that? Because you said you went all as a political party,
yes.
as IPAC.
Yes, yes.
What month was that?
The last engagement we had with INEC, I think it was the beginning of this month or something like that.
That's May.
I can't remember.
So that's what Mr. Okoye is saying, that
yes.
you didn't bring it up all of that time. Easter didn't happen all of a sudden.
No, we wrote a letter.
Neither did Salah.
We wrote a letter, and I know political parties that wrote letters to INEC before IPAC now came together as a body when we had the opportunity of meeting INEC.
I wanted to ask you precisely what you need the extra time for, because some people will say, is it not primaries? I mean, what does it really take political? It's not for people to say, I want to run, and at the local level, people choose amongst themselves. Why is it so difficult? Why
no, we have to be realistic. This is not so mechanistic. This is about human beings. This is about people's ambition. This is about the nation. This is about politics.
Yeah, but
this is about you.
What exactly
you need time.
What exactly is technical
time.
in it?
Pardon me?
What exactly is technical about it?
Oh, you know, the technical aspect. No, what is human about it? You should ask me. Technically, you can draw your timetable and say, do it between today and tomorrow or something like that. But the human aspect of it, the social aspect of it is what I'm talking about. You need to, you see, you've been hearing so much about zoning, about it's our turn, it's those one's turn, this one wants to run, this one. You know, these things need time. You need to persuade people. You need to make people understand that this is a national issue. And this is something that, and you see, politics is not just about, it's not as technical as maybe people outside are looking at it, or INEC for that matter is looking at it. Okay. INEC has a responsibility spelled out in the law. They are doing their job. Of course, we respect that.
Okay.
But there's more to it than just timetable. That's what we're saying.
Let me take you to Mr. Okoye now. Mr. Okoye, I wanted to find out this. He has asked whether the 60 days which INEC gave, did it take into cognizance these holidays that we're going to have and the human nature, which he's talked about now, of politics?
Let me make it clear. The conduct of primaries is within the internal realm of the various political parties. And the Independent National Electoral Commission will not micromanage any political party. Now, as far as the commission is concerned, they have not given any cogent or verifiable reason why the commission should tamper or adjust the timetable. And I give you a practical example. A political party submitted its membership register, and this membership register contains a total of 1,500 members. Now we have 993 state constituencies and 360 state constituencies and 109 senatorial districts, and we are going to conduct 29 governorship elections. If each member takes one position, they wouldn't even adjust it. So for that particular political party, what is the political party asking for? What is the issue that has led to a situation where they cannot conduct their primaries? What Mr. Yabagi is saying is that we should give the political parties a total period of 1 year for them to conduct their party primaries in a democratic manner, for them to do reconciliation, for them to make sure that nobody goes to court and so on. No, that is not the intent of the law. The intent of the law is that a political party should be an amalgam of people who believe in the same principles, the same ideas, the same ideological disposition. And when they have issues, they should have internal mechanisms of resolving their issues. And if they are unable to resolve it, Section 29 of the Electoral Act and Section 84 of the Electoral Act, as well as Section 285 of the Constitution, has given them the leeway on what to do. So, as far as the Commission is concerned, the party primaries are already on. Candidates are already emerging, and it is too late in the day to begin to tinker with this. And I tell you, the moment you touch this timetable and schedule of activities now, you will create even more confusion in the political parties, you will create more confusion in the electoral process, and there won't be an end to the type of litigation that will emerge. The implication is that those who have conducted their party primaries under the existing legal framework. Yes. Hello.
I just wanted to confirm, did you take into cognizance these public holidays in the 60 days which INEC gave? Did you take into cognizance the public holidays that were going to happen?
No, which public holidays are you talking about? Yabagi is talking about the Lenten period. He's talking about the Muslim brothers fasting. People were going to work within this particular period. The political parties were functioning within this particular period. They didn't shut down. If you look at Section 132 of the Constitution and Section 178 of the Constitution, it gives a period, a time bar, a circumscribed period within which we must conduct presidential, governorship, National Assembly elections. If the Lenten period falls within that particular period, and if the Muslim fasting period falls within that particular period, we cannot stop on the grounds that it has fallen within this particular period. We must conduct the election because the implication of not conducting the election within that circumscribed period will be a constitutional crisis. So for me, that is not
the period itself is a given. What I'm asking is about the public holidays that follow. We know that Good Friday is a public holiday, Easter Monday is a public holiday. We know that usually there'll be 2 days for Salah. As a matter of fact, people thought there were going to be 3 days, including the Workers' Day, May Day, but it wasn't. They were given just 2 days. So that's 4 days public holiday within the 60-day period. Did it factor in those 4 days? That's the question I'm posing to you, Mr. Okoye.
You see, and the point I'm making is that 3 days out of 60 days It's not material. It's really not fundamental. What is it that you want to achieve within these 3 days that you couldn't achieve in 60 days? Look at the timetable and schedule designed by the various political parties. Almost all of them scheduled their presidential primaries within the last 7 days of this particular period. Even some of the political parties that have a membership of just 1,500 scheduled their presidential primaries for the last day, the 3rd of June. So what is it? So for 60 days, you can't schedule your presidential primaries, or you can only schedule it on the last day. As far as the commission is concerned, we have been very fair to all the political parties. We've been consulting them, and we have designed a timetable of a 2-month period that will enable them to sort out whatever challenges they have, whatever differences they have. And all the political parties have gone ahead to submit the date they are going to conduct their congresses, their primaries, the venue where these things are going to happen. So if the political parties say they are ready, who are we to say they are not ready? So as far as we are concerned, all the mails we have gotten from all the political parties indicates their readiness to go ahead with the party primaries. No political party has said they are not capable and they are not ready to conduct these party primaries. And that's to be challenged.
Well,
let the political party say that they are not ready.
Well, again, Mr. Okoye is making that point that the parties said they were ready. But to better put this in context for our viewers as well, take a look at what the timetable from INEC says. So this timetable, as Mr. Okoye said, was published on February the 28th. So that's 2 days before that. Yeah, it was signed on 26th of February, by the way. So let's just leave it at 26th of February, right? That's a day after the president signed the Electoral Act. So it says that parties have between 4th of April and June the 3rd to conduct their primaries. That's 2 months, give or take. And then they have to submit, you know, the names of their candidates, is it for presidential and national assembly, by 17th of June. They have between the 10th of June and the 17th of June to do that. So particularly the discussion is on the primaries, which INEC says the deadline is on June the 3rd. Mr. Okoye, you've talked about the legal angle. We'll come to the senior advocate in our Lagos studio in a moment, but let me just be clear on this point. So from what Mr. Yabagisani has said, it looks like INEC is under a lot of pressure to shift this, even if it's for a few days, and you think that doesn't quite make sense. But talk to us about this. What if you get a presidential directive or an advice from the president, who is a member of the APC, saying, well, seeing what has played out even in my political party, I think you should move this? What would INEC's decision be?
Well, Section 78 of the Electoral Act 2022 says that the conduct of elections shall be subject to the direction and supervision of the Independent National Electoral Commission. The Constitution has also given the Independent National Electoral Commission the exclusive power to organize, undertake, and supervise election. It has also given the Commission the exclusive power to monitor the organization and operation of political parties. I can tell you categorically that the president will not give such a direction because the president knows that the commission is a creation of the Constitution and that the commission is a regulator of political parties. Rather, I believe that what the president will do in the circumstance is to urge his own political party and all the existing political parties to obey the timetable and schedule of activities that has been given by the Independent National Electoral Commission, and also to observe the tenets of internal party democracy in their political parties. So I am confident that the president will not give such a direction, and the president will not urge INEC to do what is not lawful, to do what is unconstitutional.
But if a president gives such directive, will INEC obey it?
My answer is no.
Okay. Well, Mr. Okoye, I know you have a timetable for this morning as well, but we would like to appeal for perhaps 10 minutes of your time so we can get the opening comments of a senior advocate in Nigeria. So please pardon us, but senior advocate, it's good you've heard both sides of this. Let's get your opening comments before we go on a break in about 2 minutes. Is there a constitutional crisis if INEC were to, INEC says they wouldn't, but do you foresee any such?
Well, good morning, our viewers. Most grateful that I'm here this morning, and I've had the opportunity of listening to both sides. The truth of the matter is that we need to realize first that there are laws regulating conduct of elections in this country. The Constitution is number one, Then very recently, we have the Extant Electoral Act 2022, ascended by the Mr. President on the 25th of February, 2022. So that regulates every activity, everything that has to do with these 2023 general elections. And as a matter of fact, everything so far built on this election, the series of activities from the one, have been built on this particular act of parliament. And if you remember very well, it just did not come up. Nigerians clamored for this, for an amendment to the Electoral Act, because it became impossible at the point that, in fact, it was clear to every Nigerian at the point that it was not possible for INEC to conduct electoral elections based on that old Electoral Act. That was Electoral Act 2010 as amended. Now, the National Assembly had looked at it properly and came up with the various innovations that we now have in this Electoral Act. And it behoves everyone, Mr. President, governors, National Assembly, even INEC itself is bound. INEC has no choice in this matter. It has to comply with the laws. And it is, if you look at the way these things have played out, you will discover that INEC has been very diligent in this. INEC continue to clamor, continue to call on political parties to comply with the law. You can see what Mr. Okoye has said. That is correct, and that was what INEC has continued to do. Now, there shouldn't be any confusion so far as implementing these laws are concerned. One is that everyone has been aware of the various provisions in the Electoral Act 2022. Everyone has been aware of it. And as a matter of fact, some of the features of very effective laws said that first, once it is signed, it has to be made public. Secondly, is that it has to be acceptable to the community. And such laws also must be capable of enforcement.
But then, you know...
And I'm coming, let me finish. It must be capable of enforcement. Then very important is that every such law should engender confidence in the people. It should be stable.
If you don't mind, Honorable Senior Advocate of Nigeria, we need to take a break. But, you know, there is something that the legal profession tells us about the letter of the law, the spirit of the law, and then the technicalities of it. And how do these all play out around the elections? This and so many other issues we'll raise with you and the rest of our colleagues when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Well, Mr. Onwenu, we've talked about the law. I mean, you've opened the conversation concerning the laws that govern and then the things that we need to consider. But as a Nigerian and as a lawyer, we knew that there's going to be elections in 2022, in 2023.
Yes.
All political parties were aware of that since 2019. And since 26th to 28th of February this year, until now, the political parties knew. And if you are to factor in what Mr. Okoye said the other time, no comment came from any party in March, no comment came from any party in April, and it was about April that INEC had begun to say, we will not shift the election. So what do you think the parties may have been waiting for until now? I know you can't speak for them, but...
It's difficult to actually speak for them, but from what I've continued to read in papers, it's like it was a game chance. They're trying to see if it would be possible to put pressures on INEC to shape the timetable. And I do not think it's going to be good for our democracy if INEC is allowed to be pressured and anything whatsoever is shifted. And as a matter of fact, the way it stands today is that there shouldn't be any further discussion on this matter because all political parties have submitted notices of their primaries elections to INEC, giving timelines that we want to conduct primaries election. Since that has been done, that ends the discussion. There shouldn't be any further question because the difficulty is that the timeline issued by INEC was based on this new Electoral Act. And any alteration of whatever is going to run through the entire election. And don't be surprised that if anything is shifted this time, these elections will be conducted maybe towards the end of next year. And that is going to alter the equation. It's going to lead to constitutional crisis.
Now, that constitutional crisis I'd like you to speak to, because there are those who are wondering, okay, maybe the last of the process before May is that we have about 2 months or thereabout before May next year, which is supposed to be the handover date. So if there is a slight shift, as Mr. Yabagi had been saying, how significant will it be in the entire process? Will it really rock anything, or we're just playing safe?
The difficulty INEC is going to face is that a lot of logistics have been put in place, and the entire provisions of the Constitution have been scrutinized, and the provisions of the Electoral Act were scrutinized and taken into consideration and given the timelines. Timeline for every stage levels of the election, was taken into consideration, coming up with these timelines. Now, if because of pressures from one or two political parties, INEC is pressured to alter the timetable by shifting anything at all, there's going to be a problem. And then there are options open to political parties, and which they need to consider. They need to look at Section 84 properly. There are options given to political parties in that section that could aid speedy resolution of whatever it is they want. If it is primaries election, if there are disputes there, they need to do so. There are primaries, there are direct primaries provided for in Section 84. There are indirect primaries provided for in Section 84. There is also consensus arrangement also allowed now under this new innovative provision. So if the political parties appear to be having any problem because of the indirect nature of the primaries they want to conduct, they could switch to direct primaries where all elected, all registered members of the political party could participate.
But wouldn't that be a lot more cumbersome for the parties?
And a little bit too late as well.
These options have been available since February. And as a matter of fact, these options were debated for a long time in the National Assembly. So do not forget that this Electoral Act had been debated for too long. And if you could remember, it's been sent to Mr. President about twice and rejected. It had to be reworked. These things were debated. Political parties saw it, and they should have factored whatever timeline they have into it. And as far as we're concerned, they have done that. So whatever is happening now is more like self-inflicted, and they need to bring all the timeline. They need to ensure that the timeline they have comply with the Constitution, comply with the Electoral Act, so that there wouldn't be any disruption of the 2023 general elections.
Right.
So, speaking of alterations, I'd like to bring it to you, but let me first of all put it through to Mr. Okoye. We could go back and forth on tinkering with the timetable, and the debate will be endless. But let's look at 84.8, Mr. Okoye. And there's been a lot of concern about whether or not the president would assent to the amendment by Parliament to accommodate statutory delegates, and some are also talking about super delegates. I imagine that it doesn't necessarily concern INEC where politicking is concerned, but where administration is concerned, that's where INEC may come in. How does this concern about whether or not the president was assent to the requested amendment by Parliament to 84.8, where does it touch INEC? Ms. Okoye, you might have to unmute because we can't hear you.
As far as the Commission is concerned, as of today, the extant electoral legal framework is the Electoral Act 2022. There has not been any amendment to the Electoral Act 2022. I am aware that a bill was passed by both houses of the National Assembly and forwarded to the President for assent. That particular bill is still incoherent. The Constitution gives the President a total period of 30 days within which to assent or to refuse assent to a bill forwarded to him. And if he refuses assent and the National Assembly or the Parliament feels otherwise, they can veto what the President has done. But as of today, there has not been any amendment to the existing electoral legal framework. So I don't think that it is healthy for us to begin to speculate on the provisions of a bill that has not become law. The political parties know that what they have to work with as of today is Section 84, subsection 8 of the Electoral Act, if they want to conduct indirect primaries. If they do not want to conduct indirect primaries, Section 84, subsection 8 does not apply to them. It doesn't apply to the conduct of direct primaries, and it doesn't apply to the consensus option. It only applies to the indirect primaries option. So the law has given political parties the 3 options to follow, and most of them have decided to go by the indirect primaries option. And that particular option and what to do, who is a delegate, is embedded in Section 84, subsection 8. So I think that the political parties should comply with the law and not to build on something that does not exist, something that has not come into force, and something that is still at a formative stage.
But under the current regime, INEC is acting, normally it's, supervisory role in the primaries that have been conducted. What's the significant difference that you have observed or that your officials are reporting in supervising these primaries without the crowd of delegates, without the super delegates and all of that? What are the significant differences that you are experiencing?
Well, you know that most of our staff and our monitors have cognate experience in monitoring party primaries. We have monitored the big primaries with super delegates and so on. And we've also monitored the primaries with that do not have super delegates. In some of the primaries that we have monitored and some of the reports that I have read, things have gone smoothly. And some of the political parties that have conducted their primaries have done very, very well in terms of conducting the primaries in a very, very peaceful manner. Some of the small challenges that some of the political parties have had in relation to their party primaries is when they do not want to follow the spirit and the letter of their own constitution, when they want to cut corners with the electoral, and when they want to cut corners with their constitution, and when they don't want to imbibe the spirit of internal democracy, then they begin to have problems. But I believe that the courts are there to resolve whatever challenges and whatever problems we have. And let me just make this point, that under Section 29 of the Electoral Act and under Section 84 of the Electoral Act, the jurisdiction to entertain and resolve disputes relating to pre-election matters has been given exclusively to the Federal High Court. The state high courts and the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory no longer have jurisdiction over pre-election matters. So I believe that the Chief Justice of the Federation has given directives in relation to this. And some of the challenges we've had in relation to some of these pre-election matters revolves around some of the high courts still trying to assume jurisdiction over pre-election matters, which has been given to the Federal High Courts exclusively. So I thought that I should make this point.
So would it be safe to say that under this current regime there is less conflict and supervising primaries, has more stability?
I think so. I think that the supervising party primaries around this current electoral regime has more stability. The only challenge we have is that some of the political parties are tentative. They are really, really unsure whether they should proceed or whether they should not proceed. Some of them have been adjusting their timetable from time to time. But I think that it is a learning period for everybody. It's a learning curve. And the Commission has been very, very flexible in terms of allowing the political parties some level of able room to adjust their timetable and also get their acts together. So I believe that after this learning curve, the political parties will stabilize going forward. But I believe that we will get there. And in the next few days, the political parties will be done with this thing. It may be painful, but they will get there.
Let me ask you, Mr. Sani, what you make of the Section 84.8, which the President is here to append the signature to in terms of the amendment that has now been done to the Electoral Act. Do you see any implications for the future of political parties?
Not at all, because...
what about the conduct of elections?
No, it has no impact with that, because it's about giving people their inalienable rights as enshrined in the Constitution, that you should be able to participate in the electoral process that would give you a leader, your leader, as a matter of fact. So if you have a situation where some people have a different choice, I think there's something wrong in ensuring that people are given their inalienable rights, like I said. So, and that's what the amendment to Section 84(8) is all about.
Yeah, but the president hasn't signed it.
Yeah, because the president has 30 days, and even after 30 days, if he feels that it is not for now, because of the implications of it to what is happening today, it might introduce other complications. Maybe that's why the president is not so quick in signing it.
But for your own political party, you do not see any implication for you. What about the major political party when statutory delegates are not able to vote? Doesn't that create a problem, especially in terms of the balance of numbers? It certainly changes the political calculations, doesn't it?
It doesn't. If people don't, there's something that you must understand about politics in this country and everywhere, for that matter. You see, the people you are talking about, statutory, delegates, those delegates do not necessarily have to participate in an election before they get their way. Because of the fact that you say super delegates, they don't necessarily have to participate. They can sit in their offices or in their homes and then have their meetings, and then this is what we want to happen. And that's what will happen in all cases, and that's what normally what happens. So I don't think it's anything to really worry about whether the super delegates are able to participate or not. They know how to participate. They don't have to be there physically. They will still have what they want. But the issue here with the adjustment or not, which is not here, is that, see, in every law, once the Constitution has made provision for a particular law and an Act of Parliament has been brought out, as in the case of INEC now, for implementation, administration of the law, of the provision of the Constitution, and implementation of it, normally the regulatory agency all over the world, they invite the major stakeholders. This is how we want to implement this law. This is the, especially when it comes to timetable that affects political parties directly. There's nothing wrong if INEC invited us to say, okay, this is the timetable. We're not asking INEC to do anything that will have the adverse effect as far as the constitutional, aspect of it is concerned. The INEC is a little body that say, okay, to implement. We say, we are a major stakeholder.
This is in reference to the postponement now, what you're asking for.
We're asking for postponement, adjustment. Nobody say postpone anything. Nothing is going to be postponed.
Okay.
As far as the Constitution is concerned.
Well, INEC has said perish the thought.
No, but yeah, they said it's too late in the day. But again, the point, the lesson I think we should learn from this one, the lesson we should learn from this, no matter how it goes, is that next time when INEC wants to do things that have major effect on the activities of political parties, there's something wrong in inviting the political parties and say, well, we are considering, and to my surprise, that's what always happened, before this time. Everything INEC wants to do, they will invite us during our engagement and say, well, we are presenting to you, do you have any input to this? So that, because we are the ones that will implement it in actual sense.
Okay.
And the whole aspect of the electoral law is the implementation of that section of the law.
I believe lessons are taken. We have to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Mr. Yabagisani is the chairman, Inter-Party Advisory Council. Excuse me. And is speaking with us here in our Abuja studios. Let me see if we can round off in 30 seconds with Mr. Festus Okoye. Did you also take away the same lesson in terms of engagement? In 30 seconds, if you can.
Yes, we will continue to engage with the different registered political parties, and we've been engaging them. We'll continue to engage with all the different stakeholders in relation to the electoral process. This law is quite progressive, has serious provisions, and all of us are learning the different lessons. And I believe that moving forward, everybody should read the law, and everybody should try to look at the spirit and intent of the law, and then have some level of fidelity to the rule of law and due process.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Festus Okoye. He's the National Commissioner, INEC, and also the Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee at the same commission. Thank you so much for coming on this morning. And then also taking the last words of our guest in our Lagos studios, I'd like to ask you if you're optimistic about how the primaries of the political parties are going to turn out this weekend. Are you optimistic that it's going to be completely rancor-free?
Very, very, very well optimistic. I'm very sure that as long as the provisions of the Electoral Act are complied with, I'm very optimistic that results of the primaries will turn out very well. And lastly, I need to make this point that Section 84 sub 8, just mentioned by both Mr. Koye and the chairman of IPAC, is not ambiguous at all. The provision of that section is very clear to the effect that if a political party chooses the indirect mode of primary selection, they ought to outline in their internal constitution a mode of democratically electing their delegates. And that provision has been there since. So if you look at the way that section, that particular provision is framed, you discover that the National Assembly knew what they wanted at the time they were enacting that provision.
But can they change the rules in the middle of the...
Well, we'll recognize...
And the implications.
Yes, we'll recognize the legislative powers to amend any of our laws at any point in time. But the problem is that if they amend it at a particular point when the provision of this constitution is already activated and so many other political parties have taken steps in complying with this provision, then it's going to be a recipe for chaos and disorder.
Sounds like you're asking for another episode of this program on this particular one already. But for now, we have to thank you. Clement Owewuno is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's not the only issue in the news. There is more when we return from this break. Please stay with us.
It's the third bi-monthly briefing of the Monetary Policy Committee for the year, which aims at intimating Nigerians on how far the economy fared in the past 2 months. The central bank governor starts the meeting with a look at how events in the international market is affecting the domestic market. Chief amongst these is the Russian-Ukraine war.
The bank further disbursed the sum of 1.5 billion naira.
One of the burning issues on the minds of members of the committee is the inflation rate, which has seen a rise to 16.82% in April.
The recovery of output growth will continue, but at a much subdued pace, considering the unfolding domestic and external shocks to our economy. The sharp rise in inflation across both the advanced and emerging market economies has generated growing concern among central banks as the progressive rise in inflation, driven by rising aggregate demand and wage growth, is putting unsustainable upward pressure on price levels.
Besides raising the monetary policy rate to 13.5%, the Apex Bank governor explains that its intervention in the agriculture, energy and power sectors, which is running into trillions of naira, is yielding results. He plans to leave the interest on loan facilities at 5%.
The committee reviewed the performance of the bank's intervention schemes targeted at stimulating productivity in agriculture, manufacturing and industries, energy and infrastructure, healthcare and export, and micro, small and medium enterprises. Between April and May 2022, the bank released the sum of 57.9 billion under the Anchor Borrowers program to 185,972 new projects for the cultivation of rice, wheat, and maize, bringing the cumulative disbursement under the program to 1.01 trillion naira. Disbursed over 4.2 million smallholder farmers cultivating 21 different commodities across the country.
This is the first time the central bank is increasing its monetary policy rate since September 2020. This is just as the bank plans price stability that is responsive to the nation's economic growth.
Oh, yes, indeed. That broke as well yesterday. It was not status quo, as had been for a few months now. The rates were changed. What are the implications of that? We have with us this morning Mr. Paul Alaje, who is a senior economist, SBM Professionals, and also a fellow Institute of Economists in Nigeria, and also a fellow of the International Management Consultants Board in the United States of America. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, first, did that come to you as a surprise, that the rates were changed?
No, it wasn't.
It was expected?
Yes.
Okay.
But I was not expecting as much as 150 basis points.
Okay.
I was expecting maybe an increase from 11.5% to about 12%. Because
that would have been a marginal increase.
Yes, it should be a marginal increase because you need to consider other parameters before you increase to with 150 basis points. That's a lot, even though we have a lot to deal with. I remember I was speaking with one of your correspondents yesterday. She had a live broadcast, I think Business Morning.
Yes.
And I was asked as to my expectation. And I said, well, the decision for Central Bank Governor and member of Monetary Policy Committee will be choosing between the devil and the deep blue sea. What the choice was, I don't know what the tag would be, whether it was the devil that was chosen or the deep blue sea. Because we have very tough decisions to make, very difficult decisions to make. Unemployment, as we speak, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, the last report shared by the agency of government was 33.1% of the labor force, which was around 70 million Nigerians. You have 136 million people who are not even part of the labor force. They are too old to work, too young to work, or not qualified to work at all. So we are managing with 70 million people to be charitable, and 33%, effectively 1/3 of that number is unemployed. We have major issue in our hand. We have growth, and from what the central bank governor said, which is very correct, in the coming period we expect that the growth will be submerged. When you now increase interest rates to combat inflation, you are going to have further unemployment. Why? Because you will crowd out jobs. You will crowd out investment. What does it mean?
But when we left it at 11.5% for that long, how many more jobs did we really create? Isn't this, you know, a marker of, you know, the severity of the problem that we have at hand? You have admitted as much. So we know that central banks are usually quite conservative in terms of how they increase interest rates. Isn't this an indication of just how severe the problem of inflation that we have at hand is?
Well, inflation is one thing. The question is, what is fueling inflation? We have three legs of every economy. Monetary, which of course you say Monetary Policy Committee or Monetary Policy Committee, yes. Then you have fiscal. Also you have trade. The trade, I mean, little or no mention of trade in our economic conversation, which is Ministry of Trade and Investment, as they put it in Nigeria. What are we exporting? One of the major drivers of inflation is exchange rate. One of the major drivers. Government is spending between 2 to 4 trillion naira on subsidy alone. Why? Quality of naira had continued to emaciate. Imagine if what exchange rate was 2015 is what we see have it today, 199. And government is talking about subsidy removal. Will it have impact on Nigerian purchasing power? No. It is because exchange rate have been emaciated over and over. Official window more than double, our parallel market more than triple. So we have that issue on one hand. We also have insecurity, which is affecting food inflation. The major driver of inflation is food inflation, higher than headline inflation. Second, third, what is happening to infrastructure? We have another challenge. So when you look at all of the major factors affecting inflation, you see that yes, we have monetary because money supply has increased according to central bank, but is that the only driver of inflation? And that is why I feel that there is no convergence in policy of the three major legs of the economy. And check any economy where you have that, you are going to have major issues. The truth is, there are other external factors affecting inflation. We have seen Russia-Ukraine war because supply as expected is not coming to Africa or developing countries. That on one hand. We have also seen that China is closing down most of the factories because of COVID. So all of this will disrupt supply side. And when supply is affected and demand remains the same, it is expected for price to increase. So as price continue to increase, do we only respond to increase in price with monetary measures? The answer is no. So as much as central bank is taking necessary decision, taking necessary measure, which includes less increase interest rate. Now, when you increase interest rate, what you expect is that you are going to see increase in savings. When there is increase in savings, expect in inverted comma is that there will be increase in investment. But is that correct? For Nigeria and the experience we have had is not so correct. I will tell you why. When you increase interest rate from 11.5 to about 13%, cost of borrowing has increased. When cost of borrowing increase, it becomes more difficult for people to access funds to start businesses or to grow their business. So if they don't have such money, what will happen to employment? Employment will further reduce.
So this has not been done in isolation. We also know that right now we are right in the middle of a political season. So part of the pressure we're also saying on the Naira is also what is happening politically, and that's what economists also believe. So there is that part where you know, there's a lot of money in circulation, and maybe what the CBN is trying to do is also rein in the inflation that could happen as a result of that. You don't see that point?
Of course, I can see that. There are a lot of money in circulation, and the way you measure is even how the parallel market rates have continued to increase in recent time. You know, the rate of increase is even higher than what we experienced 3-4 months ago. But the truth is, will this stop after the primaries? I doubt. This may extend to election. Let's put our mind back to 2014 to 15. It started like this. It never ended until 2016.
Mr. Rawane believes that there could be a temporary relief, at least maybe after the primaries. Do you also
Was
see
there
that?
election January last year? Did exchange rate not go worse off? Was there election March last year? Was it not worse off? Tell me one quarter that exchange rate at parallel market official rate had improved significantly, if you can remember one. That information is not, as much as I understand where it's coming from, but when you observe the trend of Nigeria economy, it's not very correct. You know why? There are manufacturers that want to import equipment to Nigeria, but it takes almost forever to access funds from official window.
Do you think that business people are moving right now? Because some people will say that usually when the political season sets in, there is a lot of caution. There's a lot of caution in the air. Would they be as aggressive as they normally would be if we were not in the season of politics?
Well, it might not be as this aggressive in terms of devaluation. It might not be. I don't think it will be. Because 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago, it was there, but not at this rate. So you might see some level of reduction in rates, but there will still be increase. Exchange rate may still be weaker, but it may not be at the rate at which we are seeing it now, jumping almost 5-10 naira on daily basis. It's crazy. So I don't think it will be that, but that we'll now see it go back to 500 naira or 600 naira. What we need is major inflow of FX, and that will come from trade authorities. And who are the trade authorities? Policies. I mean, maybe Ministry of Trade or whosoever the president or the constitution has empowered to do so, that we make people buy Nigerian product. We want to buy everything, but most of the things we desire are imported to our nation. So if it is quality of education that we can improve and export educated individuals to the rest of the world so that we can repatriate funds that these individuals are sending back to their families, to their friends, or to start businesses in Nigeria, that certainly will have positive impact on our economy. But we are not getting it. So when average Nigeria travel, what are they going to do? So these are concerns that I hope that we're going to look at and also see how we can improve what we earn from the FX market.
Let's flip this conversation to my colleagues now.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's interesting how much factors we have put into this conversation in just how many minutes. I mean, we've talked about the interest rates, the forex rates, inflation. We've talked about even politics, manufacturing, and all of that. Just shows how much this decision will have an impact on a whole lot of things. By the way, the CBN governor actually alluded to that political factor in his speech yesterday, saying that emerging evidence shows that money demand pressure is on the rise and is unlikely to abate until the 2023 general elections are concluded. But now let's try to focus on interest rates and the relationship with inflation, because to a large extent that's what a lot of Nigerians feel right now, the value of the money in their hands, in their pockets, and their bank accounts. And I recall that the last time out, in making the previous decision, which was to hold, the CBN said this particularly, that tightening will not necessarily tame inflation, particularly where the marginal decline is relatively not yet sustainable. So essentially they were saying, if we tighten the rates, then nothing would really change when it comes to inflation. But interestingly, this time around, the CBN, in making the decision, says tightening will help moderate the inflationary trade-off from the steady growth recovery so far. So I'd like you to speak to that point about this latest decision and what it will do to the value of money in our pocket. Do you see this changing much? I'd like you to go deeper.
Well, I believe that inflation would increase. It will increase at a slower rate now that the lending rate is expected to be higher. Inflation will still increase. When you hear tightening, the central bank governor has also said that the perception of central bank as to why central bank should go and face the core mandate with which it was created. And that's one of the reasons why that policy has been made. So I'm not against the policy. I am saying that when you tighten, be ready for the implications. One of the implications will be that you will have growth at a slower rate. That is, the projection by World Bank and IMF for Nigeria that by end of 2022, our growth may be pre-COVID period, which was less than our population growth rate, or something lower than that. So when you tighten, what you are saying is that we are increasing the parameter, the basis for most of the lending rates, most of the rates within our country. And when that rate increase, it means bank can even charge more when it comes to lending rates to their customers. And when that happens, customers will have less and less access because they will be discouraged. It will become a disincentive of some sort for them to lend out. They are talking of commercial bank. If you take that to microfinance bank at the rate with which they are giving, and that also said information to money lenders, the implication is endless. So when it becomes more expensive, quote and unquote, to access funding to put in business, the implication is that economic activity is expected to slow. In medium term, it may not be in the short run, but maybe in medium term or long run, the implication again is that GDP figures will grow at a slower rate.
Right.
Maybe not up to what we have in the last quarter report by the National Bureau of Statistics. But something is very evident. It's going to grow slower, and when that happens, expect higher unemployment figures.
It just shows the difficult decisions, really. And I recall the talk about capital outflow as well. We're seeing what other banks across the globe are doing with their interest rates. So if we look like we're loosening up or maybe even holding, then there might be more capital outflows. But speaking of perception, quickly, you talked about, the CBN governor also spoke about the perception, which you referenced, that if they were to hold, it would look like they're abandoning their core mandate of, ensuring that inflation is sorted in the country. But I'd like you to speak to us about the perception now in the business world, economists, off the back of the controversy around the CBN governor, that the reports that he was going to run for president or otherwise. Has that had any effect? You said perception, and it reminded me of that. Has that had any effect on maybe the perception locally or internationally from where you sit?
Well, from what I see, there are a number of things to check. What is happening to stock? How has the market responded to the decision made when the central bank governor was alleged to have interest in running for election for office? Political office under the platform of one of the major political parties in the country? What has happened to inflation? What has happened to exchange rate? Has Naira further devalued? These are information we can get, and they're in the public domain. So, but now the conversation is different. So I'm not hearing, because to me, the central bank governor has never made any publication to say he wants to run. And a number of interviews I've granted about what my opinion was, I've said, well, I've never heard the central bank governor, even though I saw a lawyer in court saying the office of the central bank governor is different from Mr. Emefiele, saying whether he wants to run or not. It's not said that, openly whether he wants to run or not. But the perception generally in business community is that it is a bit unprofessional for somebody occupying the central bank, the office of the governor of the central bank, at the same time to be vying for office at the same time. We feel that it may not be professional, because we were expecting that if somebody wants to run for office, he will first leave that core mandate, because that's full business. Central bank governor is not a child's play. It's policy. You are in charge of the third leg, or the first leg, if you like, of the entire economy. So you cannot combine it with other things. So now the news around is that, well, it's not running again, and you could see one of the decisions that have been made to increase rate. If you ask me, whether you hold rates or increase rates, there are several implications that you have. And none of the situation is going to be sweet. If you hold rate, you are going to see higher inflation. Even with this increase in rates, expect inflation to be higher. What politicians need to understand is that no matter who you are in office or as a politician or your interest, economics is not stupid. It will respond to your activities. As dollars is being shared among delegates, whether they vote or not is even a different ball game.
It's extremely speculative, though.
Well, it is, but what happens to inflation? With this increase, you are still going to see higher inflation. So you have interest rate increase, you now have inflation higher, and you're expecting growth to go down with higher unemployment. So well, where do we see Nigerians in all of this?
We've been told that this is not peculiar to us. This is global. There is a global tightening in general, and even those who invest outside the shores of Nigeria are not very optimistic about what the chances are that 2022 could be a good year. So,
but you know my concern. My concern is that several percentage of your personal income will be eroded to inflation. Go to those countries. If they have people or family in Nigeria and they send money to Nigeria, they become wealthier by taking that decision. So what we should say is not just that it's been exposed. Inflation in America is about 7%, thereabout. What is it in Nigeria? Official number. What is your personal inflation? It's simple to calculate. Look at basket of commodity you consumed last year. If you still consume the same basket of commodity, what is the increase? As a woman, I expect that you do more buying in terms of grocery than me. It's not generic. I just say I expect, so that I'm not crucified for that on social media. So I say I expect. So, but if you check what you bought last year and what you are buying this year, find the average in terms of percentage increase. Will it be 16.82%? For mine, it's more than 33%. Well, so I'm wondering if that average inflation affects me or not.
Well, you said it's a personal inflation, because I know that we've been told that the basket that is normally used, or the composites, used to calculate that inflation is different from what we know. Well, it's different from the everyday items that we also use. But, I mean, let us leave the conversation here for now. We know that is something that will continue. Mr. Paul Olaje, we have to thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you so much
for your time. We know that we have a few feedback right now. I'm trying to see if we can get... Yes, we have this one from Ejike Eze, who says, very impressed with at INEC Nigeria on maintaining their stand regarding the deadline for election primaries. We must wean ourselves of the unhealthy culture of incessant postponements and adjustment of timelines. This should be the dawn of a new era in our polity.
Look at this tweet from, well, Black Moses, that's the name. Says 48 months was given to political parties to prepare for primaries. Why ask for an extension? If extension is given now, then political parties will still ask for presidential election extension. They should abide by the law.
And for Edmond Otuchikere, politics is at the heart of the matter. He says there is a law in economics that states that work expands to fill the time allocated for its completion. IPAC has options. They should put more men on the job and stop complaining. They knew there was going to be public holidays all the while.
And Kenneth, about the same issue, said, well, it's quite unfortunate that these stories about Nigerian political parties, with their preparations, cut little ice with the watching public. Public perception and emerging consensus on pre-poll preparations by political parties view the parties' capacities and discipline in a poor light. I think this has just exposed how disorganized they are in putting their houses in order. I hear shots fired.
Well, I don't know who's firing the shots now, but we have to thank our viewers this morning for watching and for sending in your comments. Thank you. I'm Malkwe Yusuf.
I'm Kayode Okikele.
Look on the bright side. I am Bukola Samuel Wenimo.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.